Anne.
Hello, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. And hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Eventprofs Together at Home. I'm Sabrina Myers from Hot Hospitality Exchange, and today my guest on the chat is Anne. Now, Anne and myself have never actually met. We just had this conversation if we would have ever met. But given the situation, this has been a wonderful way to connect with people and event profs all around the world. But I follow her online on social media. Well, of late, famously known as the person that started Global Meetings Industry Day coming together to
Yeah.
the level that it did virtually. Of course, I saw this as an amazing opportunity to reach out to Anne and to connect with an event prof on the other side of the world from where I am. So thank you, Anne, very much for being a part of it. I'm going to hand over to you now so that she can tell us a little bit about who she is, what she does, where she is, and what the situation is for her right now. So over to you, Anne.
Thank you. So I am across the world. I'm in Canada, Calgary, Alberta, Canada. I own a full service event and conference management and production company in Calgary, so Spark Event Management. I've had it for about 9 years, and we specialize in exactly like I said, so association, not-for-profit, corporate trade shows, conferences, events, mostly live events up until, kind of right now. But the situation over here is we are about 2 months into kind of our lockdown. We're a little bit behind sort of Europe and Asia in terms of our progression through this. And so March 13th, 14th is a day that probably a lot of us over here in North America won't forget, because that was when everything got really real over here in North America. So I jokingly say that's like the night that Tom Hanks got it, and the NBA shut down, and
Yeah.
the NHL shut down, and hockey was no more in Canada, which really made it very real here.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
yeah, so we're about 2 months into it. They're easing into some kind of phase one openings of some essential businesses and things like that is scheduled to happen here in Alberta sort of over the next week here. But still monitoring the situation really closely. We still are getting daily updates from our government, and still cases happening, and it's certainly still spreading. So honestly, top of mind. And we talked about not dwelling too much on it, but it's hard to kind of describe the current situation without talking about it. But
It's what it's at the moment. It is what it is, right?
yeah.
So you obviously go into a physical office if it weren't for this situation. I'm assuming. So at the moment you are in home office. Do you have a
Yeah.
dedicated space for yourself, or are you kind of moving around? And what kind of schedule are you keeping, sort of?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'm kind of in an interesting situation. So right when this all happened, the lease on my office space expired. So incredible silver lining in terms of my business and being able to cut that overhead, because obviously all of our live events have sort of been put on hold.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Being a small business owner, I've always had a dedicated office space at home. And when this lockdown happened, my husband also started working from home. So he is a grain trader. And
Oh, interesting.
for the first week, I don't know anyone who has worked from home for a long period of time. I actually welcome the idea of having like an office mate.
Yeah.
So we thought it would be a brilliant idea to set ourselves up in our office together, sort of right next to each other. And it was fun for about, I don't know, 8 days. And then I actually, in all seriousness, over the course of the last 7 weeks, have noticed that setup was really difficult on my mental health and his mental health, I'm sure, and our relationships. So I actually reached out to my network here, and where I am right now is actually in a client's empty office.
Oh, wow.
Where they were like, if you need a space to just go and like get dressed and
Yeah.
drive somewhere and be there, we're not using our office. It's totally empty. So that's where I am right now.
That's
So
amazing. That's so lovely of them. How fantastic.
yeah, and the biggest part for me was just like the reaching out and asking for help, right? Like I couldn't really pinpoint what was causing kind of my stress and anxiety and the tensions in our relationship, and it really was I don't think people are designed to spend 24/7 with another human, no matter how much you love them.
Yeah.
And I think people in their work modes also have different kind of emotions
Yeah.
and behaviors, and different from when they are at home. So that was a big lesson for me, of just learning where my boundaries are and being able to voice them and process them, and then asking someone for help. And there's tons of empty office spaces in downtown Calgary right now, right? So
Exactly.
yeah, it really worked out, and I feel like a completely new person. So
Okay. And what are your sort of 3 daily essentials right now?
well, I try to get in some sort of workout exercise situation every day. I'm sure, I've seen lots of stuff about the importance of just keeping moving and keeping active. So fortunately, we have a Peloton at home, so that makes it really easy to just fit that in. Um, I would say, at least one or two of these types of conversations where I'm immersing myself in the industry and staying current. It's so easy to just feel kind of alienated and by yourself. So connecting with folks like yourself, at least once a day. And then shockingly, rap music. so so really
I
like
love that.
hardcore offensive, exit rap music. I have a
Wu-Tang,
playlist on
like
Spotify
really.
that totally like I'm a little bit older, so more back in like the 90s, 2000s, like, a lot of Eminem, like, and it's interesting because it just kind of gets you in this like kind of like fighter mindset, right?
Yeah. I love
So
that. That's brilliant. So clearly, I mean, what realizations have you come to about yourself in this period of lockdown?
yeah, that's a great question. I think the biggest realization is, as a small business owner and an event planner type A, like all those stereotypes, you're so used to, here's your list of things you got to do, and you need to stay super productive and focused on kind of moving the target forward. And
Yeah.
it's just hard to do that right now, right? Like there's so much uncertainty and there's so much unknown, and events are getting moved out 6, 12, 18 months. And I think the biggest thing I've actually had to try to teach myself and learn is just that self-empathy, and just allowing myself to manage the kind of daily tensions in my emotions. So I literally can wake up and feel invigorated with energy and ideas, and want to get to work and start implementing them, and then literally 5 hours later can be like,
Yeah.
it's all for nothing.
Roller
Like,
coaster.
this industry is decimated. Like, I'm
Yeah.
just gonna get back in bed and watch soap operas. Um,
Yeah.
and that can happen honestly to as small as like within an hour, right?
Yeah.
I vividly remember a couple weeks ago feeling kind of like on top of the world in terms of getting some things moving and getting some things going. And then we have a really big summer kind of festival here, the Calgary Stampede, that
Yes.
was canceled.
Oh, yeah.
Um, so that all happened in like the span of 45 minutes, where you just like swing from emotions. And one of kind of like the business coaches and leaders that I follow talks about like learning how to manage healthy tensions. So
Yeah.
we struggle a lot as event planners. We kind of want the like this or that, right? Or like what's the right answer, or like what's the definitive path. And he's taught me a lot about using this and that, and just reframing the context of, you can feel optimistic and you
Yeah.
can also feel like a realist, and trying to figure out how to manage those tensions within yourself and how to communicate in a way that
Interesting.
honors the complexity. Yeah, it's very, very interesting. And yeah, so long answer to your question is, I think just teaching myself and allowing myself to not have all the answers, and holding both of those kind of emotions
Yeah.
within me.
Yeah. So in terms of practicing wellness, obviously you're doing the Peloton, you've got the rap music, you've
Does that count?
to separate yourself and go to work. Are there any other things that you are sort of actively doing for wellness from like a mental and physical perspective?
Yeah, so the exercise is a huge part of it and getting outside. Like, believe it or not, it still is snowing here.
Wow,
like
really?
yes, yesterday it snowed. So the climate and the weather here, Mother Nature hasn't been our friend in terms of getting out. But whenever we're able to get outside, it really helps the family and the,
Yeah,
with a toddler at home, just burning off some energy.
yeah.
I think the biggest thing is I've really limited my news intake. That one of the best pieces of advice I got when I was pregnant was to just find one news source and that be the source that you go to for everything. So
Mm,
it may conflict with other things on the internet, but that's sort of like your go-to. So I've done very similar thing in this situation where, we have a great sort of chief medical officer here that is doing daily updates, and she's kind of the source where I find my information. I find it so easy to
cut
find
out
conflicting
everything else and just
information.
focus on her.
Yeah. And I think what's causing a lot of tensions right now is just people reading A, different news sources, and then B, perceiving it differently, right? So she can say something like, you're allowed to do this, and I read it as this is how I'm going to behave, but
Yeah,
my neighbor is reading it differently, right? So I've just tried to stay pretty consistent to just following kind of one source of news and one source of guidelines, and that's how I'm going to function. And you sort of have to turn off what everyone else is doing. I think the other thing that's really helped is just looking at all of the great things that are happening around me, right? So even people like
yeah.
you who've started projects like this that just remind us that there's ways to get creative and ways to stay connected. And yeah.
So I know obviously we're all pretty much living our lives online and we're consuming a lot of content. Has there been anyone that you've been watching or following, or perhaps books that you've been reading? So any recommendations that you can give that have been bringing you personally some joy and some positivity in the last few months?
Yeah, so on a professional level, I think there's very few people doing work better than, actually, I don't think anyone doing anything better than what Julius Solaris and Event MB are doing. And I'm sure
Yeah,
you've heard that a lot in
absolutely.
terms of just staying current with the research and getting things in front of us that we need to be thinking about as event profs, both in terms of moving our events online and what happens when we reconvene in person.
Yeah.
So I joked with Julius that every day when I'm drying my hair is when I read his daily article.
Yeah.
Outside of work, I'm doing and talking to a lot of people more. I'm quite inundated and overwhelmed with the technology side of things right now. To be perfectly honest, I don't know what the difference is between the 19,000 platforms that have come out and trying to work my way slowly through that.
Yeah.
But in terms of kind of non-technical, I've been talking and connecting with a lot of people who work in movie and theater.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I had a realization a couple weeks ago where, the last time I sat and watched something for 8 hours was when I binge watched Ozark.
Yeah. Great show,
And I
by
was like,
the way.
yeah, I was like, how come I can do that, but I can't sit through even like a 1 hour webinar? And like what parts of my brains are being activated that work in one scenario and not. So I just put out a tweet and like randomly, this is what I do. I just put out a tweet and see what
Yeah.
happens. Um, Randomly been connected to a couple of people who work in movie and script writing and theater. And they're really opening my eyes to how kind of storytelling is going to be involved in virtual events, right? So the reason I can watch Ozark for 8 hours is because I've become invested in Marty and Wendy Bird, and I want to know what happens to them, right? And so how do we incorporate some of that? So that's been really interesting to learn, both from like a psychology perspective, and then also just a good Canadian reference. Ryan Reynolds
Yes.
is just killing it from a marketing perspective right now with limited resources and getting creative, and just seeing stuff like that keeping you creative, and keep organizations that are doing cool marketing things. Like, I don't know if you saw, like, Heinz Ketchup did this puzzle. So puzzles are like exploding right now, right? Because
Yeah.
everyone's on lockdown, and Heinz Ketchup has always had a brand of like it like slowly comes out of the glass jar, right?
Yeah.
And that's like their selling point. So they created a puzzle, a jigsaw puzzle that's like 600 all red pieces.
I love that.
So it's just like full a slate of red and a puzzle that will probably take you forever, but it's so on brand with them in terms of like slowing down and taking time to be patient for things, right? And to tap into like a social craze that people have, zoned in on puzzles again. So things like that. I love brilliant marketing campaigns, and I love people who are so on tone in terms of what's happening.
On the trending, exactly.
Yeah. So I love that kind of stuff. So there's a couple people I follow more from the marketing side and that kind of stuff.
And then on the flip side, obviously, what are you doing, or are you practicing any kind of digital detox daily? Do you switch your
Yeah. Yeah, I saw that question when you sent them to me, and I am terrible at it. Like I tried to on Saturday, just, leave my phone away, and it was hard. Like I certainly have an addiction to it. And I think right now it's augmented because it's like the only way I can stay in contact with lots of people, right, is through social media. So it's certainly a thing that I think, I want to be more cognizant of, but I'm terrible at it.
But
to be honest, right?
When this whole lockdown ends, fingers crossed it's sooner rather than later, but and everything starts opening again and you can leave your house and go somewhere, what's the first place that you want to go?
Yeah, so I sing in a group with 5 other women, an acapella group. So our sound is made purely from our voices and us working together to create like a harmonious sound. And we tried it over Zoom, doesn't work. You can't hear, only the loudest person kind of gets through. So when the lockdown started, we sort of had to put our whole season on hold, right? And next weekend would have been our sort of spring concert. I've sorely missed creating music with just our voices.
Yeah.
So the first thing probably I'm going to do is have those folks over to our backyard and just like jam, around a fire pit or whatever.
And once we can all get back on a plane again, where is the first place that you would love to go?
Oh, that's such a good question. We had to cancel a girls' trip to Austin, Texas, which is like one of my favorite cities. So that might be the first. But then also just like, honestly, there's so many beautiful places in Canada that you take for granted that are just 45 minutes away. You can get on a plane to Vancouver or to Victoria or to Montreal. And so I think just anywhere really, like take a plane ride up to Edmonton, which is only 3 hours away. But there's just so much to explore, and that's such a good reminder that you're like, oh, this trip can wait till next year. So it really just reminds you that you have to like make time for some of those things, right? Like my grandpa lives in Vancouver, and you're always like, oh, this week's kind of busy, and this month is kind of busy, and all of a sudden it's been 6 months since you've seen him. And what a great reminder that literally it's a 1-hour flight to just get out there and be by the ocean and see your grandfather, right? Like that's probably what I should do.
That sounds like a good first.
I said that in case my mom is watching. She watches all of this stuff, so
which brings me to my last question, which is any words of advice for all us event profs that are out there in this together. I know you did quite an amazing feat just with one tweet, bringing the world together virtually for Global Meetings Industry Day, which I took part in. And like I said to you before we started this, it's the first time I really felt the globalness of it. And it was such a big impact here on the European and the UK, on this side of the world as well. And I know that you've also set up an organization coming together to support others. So what's your advice? And of course, let us know what you're doing, because that's amazing what you've done.
Yeah. So I told you before that I'm reaching the like 30-day limit of talking about Do My Decos virtual, because I don't think anyone else wants to hear about it anymore. So that happened. Yes. And then locally what we did, and it was solely completely 100% plagiarized from an idea that I saw a friend of mine pull together in kind of his industry, was it's called the Arise Event Collective. So basically I called up I would say, my 7, 8 most respected industry peers, kind of all in different functional areas. So we have an AV company, we have a site selection expert, like a venue expert, we have an event design company, entertainment, and a sort of planning and management firm. And we created basically a collective where we're offering free event advice and support. Like, I think there will be so many people who, the event prof world is going to be fine because we're all kind of tapped into it. We're learning, we're researching, we're staying connected. But there's a whole world of people who are, admin assistants or marketing managers that have inherited an event that someone was planning, or managers of small businesses that all of a sudden have, or associations where they don't know what to do with their event and they don't have the luxury and resources to be able to have a professional event planner, right? So this service and offering is more targeted to that group, where if you are having an event and you or we're supposed to have an event and you have to reschedule it or move it online or postpone it, and you have questions about your contracts and what you should be doing, we just want to offer free advice and support. We just want to the goal is that events continue to happen after all of this, right? What we don't want to see is everyone just sort of throwing in the towel and saying, we're not going to do this anymore. So anything that we can do to offer expertise or experience or guidance to help people continue to have events both online and after this, that's what it's all about. So it's pretty new. It's a week old. We're still trying to get the word out. So shameless plug here.
No, I love the initiative. I think it's fantastic.
Yeah. And given our virtual world, there's no boundaries and borders, right? We are a Canadian collective, so we certainly have more experience and specialize in Canadian laws and contract rules and things like that. But I'm happy to lend an ear, and everyone in the collective is offering sort of like an hour of no strings attached time. We're not going to try to sell you anything. We're not going to try to bill you for anything. It's just to chat through your questions. Back to my point of kind of conflicting advice, I think the best advice I can give you is to invest in yourself and your own career and business and whatever it is. Make sure you're doing the tactical things of cutting costs and looking at your numbers and figuring out how your career and your personal trajectory is going to look in all of this, because no one else is going to look after you and your career and your company, right? But do that in a way where you can also give back and serve the community and that can be any community. That can be the event professionals community. It can be your church. It can be your neighborhood, whatever it is, because I think both that brings you some great gratitude and joy to be able to do something that is helping somebody else. Also, keeping your brand and keeping your reputation and keeping your your name out there. And you've heard it before, super cliche, but people will certainly remember how you showed up during this time, and to try to be proud of that and try to do it in a way that will inspire others to want to connect with you even after all this, right? Like, I certainly hope this isn't just like a one-time thing where I never see you.
I hope not.
Right? Where it's like building this community is so important right now, that I think it's that tension between focusing on the tactical, but then also folks focusing on the larger picture. It's quite a balance for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Anne. That was amazing. So great insight and advice, and I had so much fun in this chat as well, which is wonderful, and I appreciate your time. Thank you so much, Anne. I wish you a fantastic remainder of the week, and thank you for joining me. And thank you to everyone for watching Eventprofs Together at Home with Anne and myself, and stay tuned. There's many more of us out there, and we're at home and we're working, and we've got stories to tell and lots to share. So thank you again. Take care, and bye.